You open Zillow or Redfin on a normal evening. You see it a really nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Safe neighborhood, decent rated schools 20 minutes from work. Listed price $419,900. Your heart picks up a little. You immediately think I'm paying $2,400 a month in rent right now. If I buy, the mortgage payment can't be that much more. And when I buy, I actually own something. I build equity. I have an asset, something to pass on to my kids one day. Renting forever just feels like throwing money away. So you pull out your phone calculator and do the quick math. 20% down equals $84,000. Loan equals $336,000 at 6.7% fixed for 30 years. Principal and interest comes out to about $2,170 a month. Add property taxes, homeowners, insurance, you figure maybe $2,900 to $3,200 total per month. Only $500 to $800 more than rent. That's not bad. Worth it to own, right? This exact moment, this exact little mental shortcut is where millions of Americans in 2026 stop thinking. And it's exactly where they start lying to themselves. Because that quick calculation, the one real estate agents love, the one buying is always better. TikToks push the one. Your friends repeat at dinner, leaves out almost everything that actually matters. Today I'm going to show you the full, brutal, honest math that almost nobody wants to show you or admit to themselves. This is not about feelings. This is not owning gives you freedom. This is not renting is throwing money away. This is cold, real numbers, 2026 numbers, with every hidden cost, every missed opportunity, every risk laid bare. If you're thinking about buying a house in the next 12 to 24 months, or if you're quietly wondering whether staying in your rental and investing the difference might actually be smarter, then you're going to want to hear the rest of this, because what you decide in the next year or two could easily cost or save you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next decade. Let's get into it. Okay, before we dive into the actual numbers, let's set the scene with what the housing market actually looks like in early 2026. Right now, February 2026, here's the cold reality. The national median home price is sitting between $435,000 and $445,000, depending on the exact data source and month. A house priced between $400,000 and $500,000 is no longer average. It's actually in the top 60 to 75% of homes by price across the entire United States. 30-year fixed mortgage rates are hovering between 6.4% and 6.9% depending on credit score, lender, and the week you lock in. First-time buyers are putting down only about 7 to 9% on average, which means most people are borrowing a huge chunk and paying private mortgage insurance on top. The homeownership rate is still stuck around 65 to 66%, basically flat, compared to 10 to 15 years ago, despite all the everyone should buy messaging. Rent for a comparable single-family house, the kind you'd compare to a $450,000 purchase, is averaging $2,200 to $3,000 a month nationwide, with many major metros landing in the $2,800 to $3,100 range. But the single most telling number, the one almost nobody talks about on social media, is the price-to-rent ratio. In many large and desirable cities right now, the price-to-rent ratio is between 25 times and 40 times. That means if you took 100% of your monthly rent and saved it toward buying that exact same house, it would take you 25 to 40 years to afford it, not counting interest, taxes, or rising prices. That is one of the highest levels we've seen in modern history. This is not a normal housing market. This is a market where, for the majority of people without special advantages, the raw math of rent versus buy is tilting very strongly toward renting, at least in the short to medium term. And that's exactly why we need to stop listening to slogans and start looking at the full picture. So let's do that next. We're going to take a real $450,000 house, not some fantasy starter home, but a typical 3-bed family house in a decent area and compare the true monthly cost of owning it versus renting something almost identical. No fluff, no feelings, just the numbers. Stay with me, we're about to get into the brutal part. Here is the completed English voice script for Part 3, continuing smoothly and naturally right after Part 2. Alright, now let's stop talking in generalities and get very concrete. We're going to take a typical family house priced at $450,000 in early 2026. Not some luxury property, not some fixer-upper, just a standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home in a decent school district in a mid to large metro area. Here's what the true monthly cost looks like side by side owning versus renting something almost identical. If you buy, down payment 10% equals $45,000. In reality, a lot of first-time buyers are putting down less than this 5%, 7%, even 3% with some programs, but let's use 10% as a reasonable middle ground. Loan amount $405,000 at 6.7% fixed for 30 years. Arrow principal and interest payment equals approximately $2,610 per month. Property taxes, national average around 1% of home value equals $413 per month. Homeowners insurance, depending on location coverage and claims history, equals realistically $200 per month. Maintenance and repairs, the rule of thumb most financial advisors quietly use, is 1 to 1.5% of the home's value per year equals. That works out to $375 to $560 per month, averaged over the year. This covers things like roof leaks, HVAC breakdowns, plumbing issues, painting appliances, dyeing stuff that always seems to happen at the worst time. HOA fees. If the neighborhood has them $0 to $350 per month. Many newer subdivisions do have HOAs, especially in the Sunbelt and suburban growth areas. Add it all up, principal interest taxes, insurance, realistic maintenance, and possible HOA, and the true all-in monthly cost of owning lands between $3,600 and $4,500. For most families in this price range in 2026, the number they actually feel in their bank account every month usually falls right around $3,900 to $4,200. Now let's look at renting the exact same house, or one that's functionally identical, same size, same bedrooms, same neighborhood, quality. If you rent average rent for a comparable 3-bedroom single-family home in a good area, $2,500 to $3,300 per month nationwide. In many major and mid-sized cities right now, think Atlanta, Dallas, Charlotte, Phoenix, Orlando, Indianapolis, etc., the going rate is more like $2,800 to $3,100. So the monthly difference between owning and renting the same quality of home is $800 to $1,600 per month. That means every single year you are paying an extra $9,600 to $19,200 just for the privilege of saying this is my house instead of this is my rental. And here's the question that should stop everyone in their tracks. Are you absolutely certain that those extra $9,600 to $19,200 every year are delivering enough value to justify it? Not in theory, not in feelings, in real dollars in real life. Because that's not pocket change. That's a car payment. That's a full emergency fund contribution. That's maxing out an IRA for the year. That's a big chunk of a down payment on a future investment property. That's money that could be working for you somewhere else, or money you could be keeping in your pocket instead of handing over to banks, counties, insurance companies, and repair contractors. Most people never run this number honestly. They stop at principal and interest looks close to rent. But principal and interest is only about 60 to 65% of the real cost of owning in today's market. The rest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA. That's the part that quietly turns a manageable mortgage into something that dominates your entire budget. So before we go any further, ask yourself one more time. If you're paying $800 to $1,600 more per month to own, what exactly are you getting in return that's worth that much extra cash flow every single month? We're going to answer that question in the next section by looking at what actually happens to your net worth after 5, 10, even 15 years. Stick around, the real comparison is coming up next. Okay, so now we know the monthly gap is real, anywhere from $800 to $1,600 more per month just to own instead of rent. The next question everyone wants answered is, over the long run, doesn't owning still win because you build equity and the house goes up in value? Let's answer that honestly by looking forward 10 years from 2026 to 2036. We're going to use reasonable, middle-of-the-road assumptions that reflect the current environment, not the super bullish assumptions people used in 2020 to 2021. Assumptions we're using: home price appreciation 3% per year. This is below the long-term historical average of 4 to 5%, but very realistic given higher interest rates and slower population growth in many areas. Rent increases 3% per year, consistent with long-term inflation and rental market trends. The monthly difference, that extra money you're not paying toward a mortgage, gets invested every month into a low-cost stock index fund like the S&P 500 at an average real return of 8% per year after fees and taxes. Starting down payment $45,000, the 10% we used earlier. Now let's run the two paths side by side. Path 1, you buy total cash you put in over 10 years, down payment plus closing costs plus every single mortgage payment plus property taxes plus insurance plus maintenance plus HOA plus any surprise repairs equals roughly $520,000 to $580,000 total out of pocket over the decade. After 10 years of 3% annual appreciation, your house is now worth approximately $605,000. How much do you still owe the bank? After 10 years of payments on a $405,000 loan at 6.7%, you still owe about $305,000. So your net equity in the house, $605,000 minus $305,000, equals $300,000. Looks good on paper, until you remember you gave up the chance to invest that original $45,000 down payment plus every single one of those extra $800 to $1,600 monthly payments you were making compared to renting. Path 2, you rent plus invest the difference. Total rent paid over 10 years starting at $2,900 average and rising 3% per year, approximately $380,000 to $420,000. But every month you're not paying the extra $800 to $1,600 toward owning you invested instead. Average monthly investment, let's call it $1,100, a conservative middle point. Plus you invest the original $45,000 down payment you never used. Invest that money at 8% average annual return. For 10 years, the portfolio grows to approximately $280,000 to $360,000, depending on the exact monthly difference. Your net worth from this path, $280,000 to $360,000, and every dollar of it is liquid. You can access it tomorrow if you need to. No realtor fees, no closing costs, no surprise roof replacement. So after 10 years, buyer $300,000 in home equity, mostly illiquid, until you sell renter plus investor $280,000 to $360,000 in cash / investments 100% liquid. In a very large number of realistic 2026 scenarios, especially if the monthly gap is closer to $1,000 to $1,500, the renter who invests the difference ends up with equal or even higher net worth than the buyer. And they did it with far lower risk. No single $20,000 to $40,000 repair bill can wipe out years of progress. Much higher flexibility, easy to move for a better job, easier to downsize if life changes. No leverage risk, no chance of being underwater if prices dip even 10 to 15%. This is the brutal truth. Most real estate influencers and buy now or be priced out forever posts refuse to show you. In today's higher rate, higher price environment, owning no longer automatically makes you richer than renting. And investing not over 5 to 10 years and often not even over longer periods unless you get very favorable conditions. Of course, there are still cases where buying wins big. We'll talk about exactly when that happens next. But before we get there, let me ask you one more time. If after 10 years the renter who invested the difference is sitting on roughly the same or more money and they had way less stress and way more options along the way, why are so many people still willing to pay the extra $10,000 to $20,000 every year just to own? We'll dig into the hidden costs that make the math even worse for buyers in the next part. Stay with me, it gets more revealing. We just saw that after 10 years, the renter who invests the difference can end up with roughly the same or even more net worth than the buyer, and with a lot less stress and risk along the way. But here's where it gets even uglier for the buying always wins crowd. The comparison we just ran is actually generous to the buyer side. Why? Because we haven't even included the 5 biggest hidden killers that almost no one talks about when they say renting is throwing money away. Let's go through them one by one. These are the things that turn a close decision into a mathematically devastating one for most buyers in 2026. 1. Opportunity cost of the down payment. That $45,000 to $100,000 you put down to buy the house isn't just sitting there. It's dead capital money that cannot be used anywhere else while it's locked in the walls of your home. If instead you had kept that money invested, same 8% average return we used earlier over 10 to 15 years, that lump sum alone could realistically grow to $150,000 to $250,000 or more depending on the starting amount and time horizon. That's not small money, that's a second home down payment. That's a child's college fund. That's several years of retirement contributions. And most buyers never even think about what that money could have become if it wasn't tied up in concrete and drywall. 2. Transaction costs, the silent 8 to 10% tax on home ownership. When you buy, you pay closing costs 2 to 3% of the purchase price, loan, origination, title, insurance, appraisal, escrow fees, etc. When you sell, and most people do sell within 7 to 12 years, you pay another 5 to 6% in realtor commissions, transfer taxes, staging repairs to make it sellable, and more. Added up, 8 to 10% of the home's value disappears into transaction friction money that never goes toward equity, never appreciates, never comes back. On a $450,000 house, that's $36,000 to $45,000 gone forever, just to get in and get out. The renter pays 0 of these costs. 3 surprise major repairs, the budget killers nobody budgets for. Houses are not appliances that work forever. They break. And when they do, the bills are brutal. Common hits in the first 5 to 10 years. New roof, $15,000 to $30,000. Full HVAC replacement, $8,000 to $15,000. Foundation work or major plumbing repipe, $10,000 to $40,000. New windows throughout the house, $8,000 to $20,000. Basement waterproofing or sewer line replacement, $10,000 to $25,000. Most people set aside almost nothing for these. They think 1% of home value per year is just a guideline until the AC dies in July or the roof starts leaking during a storm. 1 or 2 of these events can easily wipe out years of principal paydown or investment gains the renter was quietly stacking. 4. Locked-in capital and reduced life mobility. When you own, you're not just buying a house, you're buying geographic handcuffs. It becomes much harder to take a better job in another city or state. Move for family reasons. Downsize if your situation changes. Separate or divorce without massive financial pain. Pivot careers or lifestyles. The average homeowner stays in one place much longer than the average renter. Not because they love the house, but because moving is so expensive and disruptive. That lack of mobility has a real economic cost. Missed raises, missed opportunities, delayed life changes that compounds over time. 5. Inflation helps borrowers, but only if your income keeps up. Yes, inflation erodes the real value of your fixed mortgage payment over time. That's the one advantage owners love to point out. But here's the catch: property taxes, homeowners, insurance, HOA fees, utilities, and especially maintenance and repairs all rise with or faster than inflation. If your income doesn't rise at least as fast as these costs, and for many middle-class families right now it doesn't, that cheapening mortgage benefit gets completely eaten up and then some. You end up with a payment that feels increasingly heavy even though the principal is fixed. Put all 5 of these together and the math that looked close after 10 years suddenly looks very ugly for the typical buyer, especially if they sell within 10 to 15 years, hit 1 or 2 big repairs, or see their income stagnate. These aren't rare edge cases. These are normal life in home ownership. And they are exactly why in today's environment, so many people who bought the dream end up feeling financially trapped instead of liberated. Next, we'll look at the few specific situations where buying still crushes renting, so you can see if any of them actually apply to you. We're getting close to the final answer. Stay with me. So we've covered the brutal side, the extra monthly costs, the opportunity costs, the transaction fees, the surprise repairs, the lack of mobility, and how inflation doesn't help as much as people think. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, so renting and investing wins almost every time in 2026. Should I just forget about buying forever? Not quite. There are still very specific situations where buying crushes renting, and in those cases the advantage can be massive. But these situations are much narrower than most people realize. Here are the 6 realistic scenarios where owning still clearly comes out ahead, even with today's high prices and high rates. 1. You buy in a location with strong sustained price growth, top 15 to 20% of US markets. Not every city or suburb is the same. Some areas consistently outperform the national average. Think certain parts of Austin, Raleigh, Durham, Boise, Nashville suburbs, Phoenix outer rings, or select coastal pockets that keep attracting high-income jobs and limited supply. If you buy in one of these top-tier growth markets and hold for 10+ years, home price appreciation can easily hit 4 to 6% per year or higher in hot cycles. That extra appreciation compounds fast and can outweigh the higher monthly costs and opportunity cost of renting plus investing. But notice this only applies to the top 15 to 20% of markets, not the average suburb or declining Midwest city. 2. You plan to stay put for a very long time. At least 15 to 25 years. The longer you stay, the more the math swings back toward owning. Why? Transaction costs 8 to 10% get amortized over many more years. You pay down more principal. Repairs become less painful relative to the total time owned. Appreciation compounds longer. If you know with high confidence that this house will be your home for the next 15 to 25 years, or you're extremely unlikely to move, then buying often pulls ahead even in average markets. But if your job, family situation, or lifestyle might change in the next 5 to 10 years, the math favors renting. 3. You locked in a very low interest rate in the past, below 4 to 4.5%. If you bought or refinanced between 2020 to 2022 and still have a rate under 4 to 4.5%, congratulations. You are in one of the most powerful financial positions possible right now. That low fixed rate acts like a hedge against inflation and makes your real monthly payment drop dramatically over time. In this case, owning usually destroys renting even if prices don't skyrocket. For everyone else borrowing at 6.5 to 7% today, this advantage simply doesn't exist. 4. You house hack aggressively. This is the single biggest way ordinary people turn homeownership into a wealth-building machine in 2026. Examples: buy a duplex, triplex, or small multifamily arrow, live in one unit, rent out the others. Buy a single-family house with the basement apartment or ADU accessory dwelling unit. Rent out rooms to roommates or long-term tenants. When done right, rental income covers 60 to 100% of your mortgage taxes, insurance, and even some maintenance. Your real out-of-pocket cost drops to almost nothing, sometimes less than renting would have cost. Meanwhile, you still get all the upside of ownership equity buildup plus appreciation. This is how many younger buyers in expensive cities are actually building wealth fast, while most traditional single-family buyers are just breaking even or losing ground. 5. You value homeownership primarily as emotional stability, not as an investment. Sometimes the decision isn't about maximizing net worth, it's about peace of mind. If you hate moving every few years, want the security of never being forced to move by a landlord, value predictability, fixed mortgage versus rent increases, see the house as home and roots rather than a spreadsheet line item, and you're willing to accept that you may give up some financial upside to get that emotional benefit, then buying can still be the right choice for you even if the math isn't the absolute best. Just be honest with yourself that this is a lifestyle decision, not a wealth maximization one. 6. Your income is expected to rise sharply in the next 5 to 10 years. If you're early in a high-earning career path, tech, medicine, law, skilled trades, entrepreneurship, etc., and you expect your household income to increase 30 to 100% over the next decade, then stretching a little now can make sense. A payment that feels tight at $150,000 a household income becomes very comfortable at $250,000 to $300,000. But if your income growth is average or stagnant, which is the reality for most middle-class families right now, that stretch becomes dangerous. Those are the main 6 scenarios where buying still clearly wins in 2026. If none of these 6 apply to you, which is the case for the majority of people looking at houses today, then the honest math says renting plus investing. The difference is likely the stronger financial move. In the final part, we'll wrap it all up with clear, actionable advice for what you should do right now, whether you're leaning toward buying or staying in your rental. We're almost at the end. Don't stop now. All right, we've gone through everything: the monthly numbers, the 10-year net worth comparison, the hidden killers that most people ignore, and the few specific cases where buying still wins big. So what's the final verdict in 2026? There is no blanket answer like renting is always better or buying is always the right move. The honest answer is this: in the majority of real-world situations right now, the math leans strongly toward renting. Plus investing the difference, unless you fall into one of the 6 specific advantages we just covered: top growth market, very long hold, low locked-in rate, aggressive house hacking, emotional priority over finances, or rapidly rising income. For most people, especially those buying a single-family home at today's prices with today's rates and average income growth, the numbers simply do not favor ownership as the superior wealth-building path in the short to medium term. That's not an opinion. That's what the full math shows when you include everything. Not just the mortgage payment, but the true all-in costs, the opportunity costs, the risks, and the lost compounding. So here's the practical, no BS advice you can act on right now. Calculate the real cost of owning every time. Never just look at principal and interest. Always run the full PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, plus at least 1.2 to 1.5% of the home's value per year for realistic maintenance and repairs. That's the only number that matters. Compare apples to apples. Find the current rent for a house that is truly comparable, same size bedrooms, location, quality, schools. Take the monthly difference between owning and renting and assume you invest that difference every month at a realistic 7 to 9% annual return after fees and taxes. Historical S&P 500 average is around 8% net. Red flag rule: if the monthly gap is more than $800 to $1,000 in favor of renting, pause and think very carefully. That's a big number. It adds up fast and compounds against you over time. Don't rush just because you feel ready or because someone said prices will keep going up forever. Don't let emotions beat the math. The 3 biggest traps right now: I want my own house so bad. If I don't buy now, I'll be priced out forever. Everyone I know is buying, so I should too. These are emotional drivers, not financial ones. They have already caused a lot of people to make decisions they later regretted. If you still decide to buy, do it the smart way. Prioritize house hacking duplex/triplex, ADU renting rooms. This is the #1 way to make ownership actually cash flow positive. Choose a location with strong, proven long-term growth. Put down as much as possible, 15 to 20% minimum, to avoid PMI and lower the loan size. Lock in a long-term fixed rate. Don't gamble on ARMs unless you're very confident rates drop fast. Build a large emergency fund, 12 plus months of expenses before you close, because repairs and life surprises don't stop just because you own. One last sentence I want you to carry with you. A house is not the best asset for building wealth. The best asset is financial freedom, and in 2026, that freedom usually comes from not letting a house control your monthly cash flow. So where are you at right now? Still planning to keep renting and invest the difference? Or are you preparing to buy, and if so, do you fall into one of those 6 winning scenarios? Drop a comment below and let me know. If you want, share your rough numbers, price range, income, down payment, rent you're paying now, and I can help you run the specific math for your situation. Thanks so much for sticking with me all the way through this. I know it's long and it's not the feel-good, just buy a house message you see everywhere, but I believe you deserve the full picture. See you in the next one. Take care and make the decision that actually gives you more options, not fewer.